An emergency is brewing inside America. A political explosion is imminent. The Senate has sparked a revolution. People are turning away en masse from Trump's course. Polls are flashing red. Marco Rubio is already slipping out of Trump's control. A blow from where no one expected. Classified documents. What the US leader managed to pull off in Europe is impressive. A decision on Ukraine and Russia has been made. A black scenario for Russia, blackouts and water shortages. The Ukrainian Armed Forces are launching the Wheel of Vengeance. Unexpected traps, chaos, and panic on the front line. Among the occupiers, the Ukrainian Armed Forces have broken the Kremlin's back. Everyone is already talking about this Ukrainian triumph. All this and more in our episode Hell Point. A sensation. America is burning from within. A real political upheaval in the USA. People are turning away en masse from Trump's policy on Ukraine. Sociological polls are exploding in red. The president is on the verge of a complete failure. The Senate has sparked a rebellion within the administration itself, a silent war. Even Secretary of State Mark Rubio is slipping out of Trump's control. All the details. Watch right now.
Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, Boston. In dozens of cities across the U.S., mass protests have taken place against the peace plan proposed by Washington, which, according to participants, effectively legitimizes Russian aggression and forces Ukraine to accept Moscow's terms. The American political establishment, which opposes Trump's policies, also joined the mass protests. For example, in Chicago, Congressman Michael Quigley joined the protests.
When authoritarian regimes try to erase an entire people, the world has no right to remain silent. We cannot repeat the mistakes of the past, and we cannot allow Trump to force Ukraine to accept a false peace dictated by Moscow.
Americans are very dissatisfied with Trump's policy toward Ukraine. If the 47th President of the United States began his second term in office with the support of 47% of the population, then due to the peace agreement, or more precisely, the effective capitulation of Ukraine, which the White House is trying to force Zelensky to sign, Trump's approval rating has dropped to a historic low. It's not just ordinary Americans who are dissatisfied with the peace plan. The agreement has caused moderate resistance in the Senate, both among Republicans and Democrats.
Putin spent the entire year trying to make President Trump look foolish. If administration officials are more concerned with appeasing Putin than ensuring real peace, then the president should find new advisors.
This capitulation agreement is not suitable for America, Europe, or Ukraine. It was written by Putin and benefits only him.
Trump constantly threatens that the US will withdraw from the negotiations if a peace agreement is not signed in the near future. But in reality, he cannot do this, at least not until the US midterm elections for the House of Representatives and the Senate in November 2026. Because his approval rating is falling and his support is decreasing. Therefore, Trump won't dare to anger voters even more.
He has already damaged his relationship with part of his own audience, with the so-called MAGA movement leaders, over the Epstein files and the scandals surrounding their publication. Later on, if he now announces that he's completely washing his hands of and forgetting about Ukraine, he will have damaged his relationship with conservative Republicans, traditional conservative Republicans, who, although they are in the minority, still have quite a significant influence within his own party.
Trump wants a peace deal and wants all the glory to go to him. And anything that doesn't bring personal benefit to the president doesn't interest him. In turn, Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated in a recent interview that he holds a pro-Ukrainian position in the negotiations. And he assured that Ukraine has good prospects and without security guarantees, a peace agreement will not be signed.
Theoretically, if everything is done right, in 10 years, Ukraine's GDP could surpass Russia's GDP. That's what's needed. To stop the war, to make sure that they are never invaded or attacked again. To protect the long-standing and long-term sovereignty and independence of Ukraine, so that they do not become a puppet state. They are truly independent and sovereign, allowing their economy not just to recover, but to thrive, turning it into a story of prosperity.
Ordinary Americans are taking to the streets in protest. Senators and congressmen are already openly expressing their disagreement with the peace deal, and even Trump's closest circle is against making concessions to Moscow. Meanwhile, the 47th president is talking about the need to hold elections in Ukraine, but if he doesn't listen to those around him, he himself might not make it to the end of his presidential term in the US.
Shock! Trump is breaking into Europe with a secret plan for Ukraine. Classified documents from Washington could turn the whole game upside down. But most importantly, there's a separate section about Russia. Moscow will get a chance to return to the global economy, but at a price that Putin may not be able to bear. Europe is boiling, markets are exploding, the Kremlin is in a panic. What are the hidden features concealing? Watch on for all the explosive details.
While the fate of Ukrainian cities is being decided on the front lines, across the ocean a plan is being developed to help rebuild Ukraine after the war. At first glance it sounds very promising, almost like the long-awaited signal of support. But let's figure out what really lies behind this move. As the Wall Street Journal reports, the administration of US President Donald Trump recently handed over a series of brief, almost terse documents to its allies. Within these few paragraphs is concealed a new vision for the post-war order of the continent, in which the fate of Ukraine and the future of Russia are closely intertwined, though not at all in the way Europe had expected.
The documents contain plans for American financial companies and other businesses to gain access to approximately $200 billion of frozen Russian assets for the implementation of projects in Ukraine, among which, in particular, there is the idea of building a massive data center that would receive electricity from the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant.
According to the publication, American officials assure their allies that this approach will help accelerate peace, while also attracting additional investors to Ukraine. From the heads of the largest financial corporations to billionaires, they are ready to invest in large-scale projects. Moreover, some documents state that the amount needed for reconstruction could rise to $400, and according to some estimates, even up to $800 billion if the model is
This process is fully and completely implemented, ensuring all aspects are covered. The proposed solution has been successfully implemented, integrating all necessary components and functionalities to ensure optimal performance and achieve the desired outcomes effectively. The full-scale invasion began in 2022.
But even more controversy surrounds the second part of the plan, which many European officials have called an economic Yalta. Washington proposes not only to use Russian assets, but also to simultaneously launch a process to reintegrate the Russian economy from international isolation. According to the document, American companies are given the opportunity to invest in strategic sectors of the Russian economy, from rare earth metal extraction to drilling in the Arctic. Moreover, the plan provides for US assistance in restoring the flow of Russian oil and gas to Europe. The very same flows that the continent has been painfully yet persistently trying to abandon for the past 3 years.
All of this clearly points to a systematic and deliberate effort by the United States to establish such a comprehensive and strategic path of control over the political, economic, and military spheres of the Russian Federation, and on the other hand, to secure and guarantee ongoing sales of goods and services. According to the official and firmly established position of the European Union, which has clearly articulated a comprehensive and ambitious goal to completely and definitively abandon all Russian energy resources by the year 2027, the United States of America has subsequently made the strategic and significant decision to actively replace these very same Russian energy resources with alternative and more reliable sources. With the same ones, but under American documentation, and approximately the same is planned to be done with the frozen assets as well. As we can see, some European countries are blocking Ukraine's access to these resources. Similarly, the United States is blocking Ukraine's access to the frozen assets. Everything is heading towards the US lobbying for the interests of the Russian Federation, in one way or another, promoting their return to
For Europe, the American plan sounds like an attempt to open the door to the Kremlin at a time when the war is still not over, and the threat of a renewed attack remains more than real. The EU is convinced that this strategy undermines the very logic of sanctions, which were based on the idea that the aggressor must pay for starting the war, not gain new opportunities.
Urgent blackouts and a water apocalypse in Russia. The Ukrainian Armed Forces have set the wheel of revenge in motion. The year 2026 will be fatal for the Russian Federation. Thunder from the sky, Russia is being driven into chaos. But this is only the beginning of hell for Russians. On the front line, our forces have set an unexpected trap. Watch the report for all the details. A catastrophe for Russia from the Ukrainian Armed Forces. Ukrainians are responding to Russian blackouts with blackouts of their own. As the Russians themselves write, they have never seen such a critical number of drones before. It has been confirmed that the Dorogobush thermal power plant in the Smolensk region was hit. A bright fire broke out in the area of the strike. Drones also struck the Okron enterprise in Veliky Novgorod. They produce fertilizers from components that are also used to make explosives. A fire also broke out at the site. The mayor of Moscow reported the alleged downing of 31 drones over the capital during the night.
This involves the use of up to 300 aerodynamic strike missiles. This is a record number of Russians who have been forced to acknowledge the very fact that the Ukrainian side is scaling up its strike drones and improving their tactical and technical characteristics.
Ukraine is already using long-range unpleasant missiles: Neptune, Palyannitsia, Flamingo, and Sapson. At the same time, some of the strikes remain unclear to the enemy in terms of the type of weapon used.
This refers to the entire collection of armaments encompassing all forms of offensive and defensive instruments and systems. It includes everything from traditional firearms to advanced technological devices and sophisticated military hardware, all considered integral components. Strikes using S-200 surface-to-air missile systems, noting that these are of Soviet manufacture, have been carried out on airfields located in the territory of the occupying country, specifically Milerovo and Baltimore.
President Volodymyr Zelensky noted that there have been many instances when our enemy believes that the Neptune missile was used.
At present, the Ukrainian president has announced the scaling up of Ukraine's ballistic missile program. And first and foremost, this concerns the possibility of scaling up production in Flamingo. Moreover, there are 3 modifications involved, with target engagement ranges of 200 kilometers, 800 kilometers, and 3,000 kilometers.
The security service of Ukraine struck the Filanovsky oil production platform, which belongs to Lukoil Nizhnevolzhneft. According to journalists, this is the first strike on Russian oil infrastructure in the Caspian Sea. At least 4 hits have been recorded. Oil and gas extraction from more than...
It has been officially confirmed that the extensive project involving the drilling and operation of 20 wells, which was a significant undertaking, has now been completely and unequivocally halted. This comprehensive cessation of all related activities means that no further work will proceed on any of these 20 sites, bringing an immediate and definitive end to the entire initiative, to block the very possibility of extracting oil and gas for the needs of the Russian Federation.
As of December 11th, the total combat losses of Russian troops in Ukraine have reached nearly 1,500 personnel. Over the past day, the enemy also lost 7 armored combat vehicles, 23 artillery systems, and 82 drones.
Under the cover of thick fog, the defense forces of Ukraine managed to bring heavy armored vehicles into the area. And according to the Russian side's own estimates, Ukrainian tanks have significantly slowed the advance of Russian assault groups.
In the video, you can see the process, so to speak, in action. Specifically, how Ukrainian fighters are eliminating Russian troops in the Pokrovsk direction, which has remained unconquerable for Putin for over a year.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Siversk and Pokrovsk are ablaze with fighting. The enemy is throwing everything into the breakthrough, but the Ukrainian armed forces have shattered all of Russia's plans. The Russian advance in Pokrovsk has been halted, and the Ukrainian triumph in Kupiansk is shocking even the pro-war Russian correspondents. Russian troops are cut off and doomed to defeat. All the sensational details are in the report. Siversk has not been captured, although the situation in the city is difficult. The Operational Command East is cooperating. They have refuted Russian fake news about the capture of the city. In turn, the Deep State Project reported that Russian occupation forces have intensified their attempts to advance in the Siversk area of Donetsk region. According to experts, the enemy continues to amass infantry near the settlement. The situation remains difficult in the Pokrovsk area as well. However, our command reports that the situation has nevertheless managed to improve. The Russian advance has slowed significantly, and the enemy has lost part of its logistical routes.
The maneuvers carried out by our fighters, which stabilized the front, including their withdrawal from the difficult situation in the area of Suky Yar and Lysivka, have today straightened the front line. Today, it is clear that the Russians have failed to achieve any significant changes, despite the fact that the enemy is making enormous efforts to try to advance both in the city center and, accordingly, in the northern districts of Pokrovsk.
At the same time, a number of analysts are reporting the effective encirclement of the neighboring town of Mirnohorod. According to open sources, the defense forces did have to abandon some positions. However, the occupiers have still been unable to close the encirclement, and accordingly, a cauldron has not
occurred. According to military analyst Kirilo Mikhailov, who has extensively studied these complex geopolitical dynamics, the possibility of information leakage in both directions remains a significant concern. This leakage, which could involve sensitive intelligence or strategic plans, is still very much possible, but when coupled with deliberate cutting measures such as severing communication lines or supply routes, the situation becomes even more critical and potentially escalates rapidly.
Kupiansk. Successes of the armed forces of Ukraine. They have reached such a scale that it is impossible to admit it. Even the Zviskors can't do it anymore. In particular, it is reported that Russian troops in the city have already been cut off from the crossing over the Oskil River to the north, through which supplies are delivered.
Here the question arises, how did Gerasimov's sense of taking Kupiansk affect the situation? Usually this has the most negative effect. After reports are sent up the chain, the command on the ground is required to make reality match the reports, regardless of losses or reasonable necessity.
On the contrary, some successes of the Russian Federation are acknowledged by the Ukrainian command in the Kharkiv region, particularly in Vovchansk.
In Vovchansk, the enemy also managed to advance a little. Given the ruins that Vovchansk itself is in today, it is clear, I hope, that the pressure is greatest there. Pressure in this direction may increase. However, Russian losses today, and let's say the Russian units that are in this direction, have somewhat run out of steam. And
on the southern front of the country, the front line has finally been stabilized. The alarming news that had been coming from positions in Zaporizhzhia and Dnipropetrovsk regions in recent weeks seems to have come to an end. The reserves that managed to reach these directions have completed their tasks and have tied down the Russian assault units.
today, Ukrainian defense forces managed to improve their tactical positions in Zaporizhzhia and Dnipropetrovsk regions. We are not naming the location today, but our troops have made advances. Accordingly, these counterattacking actions are preventing them. This result shows that the Russian army is losing momentum, but again, we expect reinforcement with reserves.
At the same time, analysts note that in recent months, against the backdrop of Russia's desperate assaults, there are more and more videos appearing online from Russian positions where they openly talk about the price paid to take control of this or that forest belt.
There's no rotation, no food. We drink from puddles. Once every 3 days, water doesn't arrive, food doesn't arrive, the guys are dying. In a month, more than 50 people have already been killed or wounded. People, anyone who hears this video or knows about it, please help. We're being sent to slaughter. The commanders don't even consider us human.
Well, maybe this will finally reach those who are still thinking about joining the ranks of the Russian armed forces. Because Russian contract soldiers simply have no other prospects. An extreme turn of events. The president of Indonesia flew in to meet with the Russian dictator, and this is already the second time this year. A secret connection in the military technical sphere. Is the bunker dweller really searching the world for ways to keep fighting? But why did the dictator himself decide to fly to Indonesia? Find out in the upcoming segment. While the West is ramping up sanctions and international pressure, Russia is establishing a new axis of cooperation. And this time, the second key meeting took place in the Kremlin with the president of Indonesia. Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto is back in Moscow, and this is already his second visit this year. This time they discussed energy, agriculture, and military cooperation. But what is really behind this?
Could this be a significant diplomatic visit? Perhaps these are comprehensive agreements about the extradition of individuals who ultimately end up in Indonesia, specifically at the formal request of the appropriate and relevant Russian authorities.
And of course, no meeting between Putin and foreign leaders goes without military technical topics. We
have traditionally had very reliable relations in the field of military technical cooperation. Indonesia is our traditional partner in this area. They are developing and are at the level of good professional cooperation.
Of course, the Kremlin is eager to expand such agreements, especially now when the Western market is close to it.
First and foremost, of course, various types of military equipment. It is evident that Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, did not, by any stretch of the imagination, miss the opportunity to make his intentions clear and execute his strategic objectives with precision and unwavering determination, ensuring that his message was unequivocally delivered and his actions had the intended impact on the geopolitical landscape.
The topic of Indonesians living in Russia. At our
universities, including military academies, Indonesian specialists are constantly being trained, and we are ready to expand this cooperation.
But what would that mean?
Today, Putin is catastrophically short of cannon fodder. That's why, among the shadow negotiations, there may be discussions about how Indonesian citizens could fight in the Russian army. I don't believe that even such shadow negotiations have taken place. I don't know in what format, but I think the state, meaning Indonesia, should not get involved in this story.
The Kremlin dictator also confirmed his readiness to help Indonesia with its plans to develop nuclear energy and build its first nuclear power plant.
For the Kremlin, this is extremely profitable. And again, let's not forget about Rosatom. It's currently a cash cow for Putin's close associates as well, Putin's people. Rosatom is a major contributor to the Russian budget. And accordingly, the expansion of Rosatom's influence in the world is something that greatly concerns and worries Putin.
The Indonesian leader also invited Putin to visit.
I would like to sincerely and warmly invite you to personally visit the beautiful country of Indonesia at a time that is most convenient for you. Perhaps this could be possible in 2026 or 2027. We will adjust to your schedule and would be very happy to welcome you to our country.
However, there was also a playful jab at the bunker dweller.
You can't just keep flying to India after all. And
the thing is, just last week, Putin visited India, where similar issues were discussed: trade, military cooperation, and economic ties.
This is a planned tour to gather some trump cards for negotiations with Trump. Because in its foreign policy strategy, the Trump administration has explicitly stated that their main interest is the Pacific region. And so, where is Putin now? In the Pacific region. Indonesia, India.
Thus, in order not to lose one of the last major buyers of Russian oil, Putin had to make serious concessions.
Putin promised India stable oil supplies and discounts of up to $20 per barrel.
It turns out that the meeting with India and Indonesia was no coincidence. Moscow is strengthening contacts wherever possible. India gets favorable oil terms, Indonesia access to technology and grain. And Russia is strengthening its partnerships.
Putin decided to gather some geopolitical trump cards to overshadow the situation, which is proving quite difficult with Ukraine, because Putin does not want to make any concessions on the Ukrainian issue. And that means he needs to gather some other trump cards to make, well, Trump loved, after all. Well, to betray not only Ukraine, but also Europe.
That's all from me for now. This was Yarina Tazlanova with you. Even more hellish news in our next episode. And in the meantime, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you!